Hello, dear friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll have a new episode of the most beautiful banknotes. After last week, we had a different episode more about the finance of banknotes or banknote collecting. This time we're gonna get back to the most beautiful banknotes, and today it's gonna be about Burundi, the thousand francs of 1968 to 76. And as always, before we actually start discussing the banknotes, I will give a brief introduction of Burundi. Burundi, it's known that the kingdom of Burundi existed at least since the 15th century. Um, how important the kingdom of Burundi was in the African region, um, I was not able to find out, but their territory seemed to have been more or less what is today Burundi and some conquerors here and there. It was a kingdom, and here you have an example of one of the kings of Burundi. This one, of course, already from the 20th century. And actually, 20th century or late 19th century is when the Europeans started to have some interest in that area, which is continental Africa, so not close to the coast. And the first colonizers, let's say officially, are the Germans with the German East African Company. Later, the country of German East Africa, or the possession of countries East Africa, which is Tanganyika also, and nowadays mostly Tanzania. This started in late in 19th century, so around 1884, and it didn't last long. With the First World War, tensions were also high in Africa. There's also actually a very interesting book about this region, which also incorporates a bit about the history in the First World War, which is the history of Congo. It's a I don't remember the name of the author, but it's from a Belgian author, and it's about the history of Congo since the tribesmen until nowadays, and it also covers a bit the World War in this Great Lakes region. So with the First World War, Belgium did take possession of Rwanda and of Burundi, and also of Rwanda. This was in 1916, and then in the peace agreements, Germany basically lost the whole German East Africa, and both Rwanda, or the countries of Rwanda and Burundi, became part of the Belgium Empire. Um, this lasted until the 60s, when, well, until late 50s, when the two countries were united, Burundi and Rwanda, with the Uranda Burundi nation, but this didn't last for long, and in 1962 the country achieved independence. And here it's where we need to talk a bit about this whole region, about the the lake region, big lake region. So as you can see here on the map, um, this area is particularly troublesome. It incorporates part of Congo, a part which has a lot of minerals, mostly diamonds, this area here. It incorporates Uganda, then Rwanda here, and of course Burundi. Um, Despite all these tensions created by, and these were created artificially, also by the Belgians and also by other colonizers in the region, uh, there's of course the racial conflict going on for many decades now between the Hutus and the Tutsis in this region, especially in Rwanda and Burundi, but it also encompasses parts of Congo. This war, especially the side of Congo, it's still not really controlled by the Congolese government. Kinshasa is very far away from this region, and it's basically a lawless place. I've been to this area to see the gorillas, um, and I've been to both Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo. Never been to Burundi actually, but although Rwanda is nowadays a safe African country and one of the most developed ones. Uh, the talks are also that basically Rwanda just steals resources from Congo, especially diamonds. And what happens in Kigali is far from what's happening close to the Congolese borders in terms of um, calmness and in terms of development. Anyway, going a bit outside the politics of the region, Burundi actually has also by itself a very tragic history. It's the first government elected by the people there in 1958 was led by this gentleman here called Louis Rugazor. He was actually the son of one of the kings of Burundi, or the king of Burundi at the time, and he studied in Belgium, and there he became, well, having talked with a lot of different Pan Africans also at that time, including Patrice Lumumba, he became one of the biggest advocates for independence of Burundi. He won the 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 government elections in 1961 with his party getting more than 80% of the votes, but 2 weeks later he was assassinated by a Greek national. And although not 100% confirmed, Burundi last year presented a court case against Belgium, and it was expected, or it's known that Belgium was behind this assassination at the time. So the next year, actually, Burundi became an independent country, and dictatorship followed. Basically, there was a first election, but then there's a number of coups, and in 1972 there was this first big genocide between Tutsis and Hutus, and this is during the regime, which is a dictatorship of Michel Micombero, and that's him here in a banknote. So this is something very African, I would say, that all the dictators get their place in banknotes. Um, Later, after a first genocide and war, um, there was a calm period in the 80s, or calmer, I would say, although the conflict still was high, especially close to the Rwandan border. In 1993, with the spillover, also a bit about the Rwanda genocide, there is a new conflict in Burundi, and here it's Melchior Ndadaye, this gentleman here that is actually assassinated also in 1993, again over racial tensions. And since then, um, things haven't been better. So it's during the period of the dictatorship of Michel Micombero that this family of banknotes is issued. You would see that they are not so close together in terms of the theme. It's not like you can see this is a proper family of banknotes with a specific design that covers all of the countries and just changes the color, which also suggests that basically this was done one at a time when there was necessity. I could not find exactly how this was programmed in terms of this series, but you can see here Micombero at the time and Hagazor here in one of the banknotes. And all of them have either tribesmen or local culture. Here there's a building, two politicians, but the most beautiful of these banknotes is actually the 1,000 francs, and this is the one that we are looking into today. So the other ones have all different figures, but on this 1,000 francs, someone decided that they should go with the natural flora of Burundi. So they have this very nice bird. It's called Paradise Wida bird, um, who lives in East Africa, not just in Burundi, but in a large part of East Africa, and who is depicted here in the front of this banknote. The whole banknote It's much more colorful than the other ones of this issue, and it's also much more detailed somehow. Um, so it's a very pretty banknote and also not very common. Um, Also interesting is that Burundi, um, after independence, adopted two languages as official: French, which was what was spoken by the Belgians, and Kirundi, which is a local language, and that's the language that you see here. This is completely different than actually with Rwanda, because of course Rwanda was also under France or under Belgium, sorry, but nowadays they adopted English as an official language, and it's basically English is almost more spoken than French. Also interesting is that even the back of this banknote also shows um, animals from the region. In this case, it's something that it's not just from East Africa. There's all over Africa. It's the longhorn Ankoli watuzi. This is a specific type of bull, African bull with this long horns. That is, it's a domesticated animal which is used mostly in agriculture in Africa. So it's an important source of equipment for the African population. In terms of prices, this banknote specifically, it's rare, especially for a banknote from the 70s. Um, the catalog prices, once again, do not really give you so much detail on how difficult this will be to find. So you should go into the market prices. And here, the 25A, which is um, the earlier banknotes, this will bring you to around 720 to 1,500 US dollars in uncirculated condition, while the 25B does exist more, but there's less register also of ones being sold lately. And the only one that I could find, almost uncirculated is it was the cost was around $400. Specimen you can get cheaper, for 300 bucks, and there's a color trial which you can also get actually cheaper than the issued banknote. The last one sold was at 560 US dollars last year. And these are actually the banknotes that we'll look into. The specimen only has a hole in the middle, nothing else, and then of course the zeros. The color trial is of brownish color, and it's not as beautiful, in my personal opinion, as the issued banknote. Although it's not ugly at all, it's just not as beautiful as in blue. Interesting enough was also that in 77 there was a small revamp of the banknotes in Burundi, and the 1,000 francs was changed into a greenish color, which unfortunately is not so beautiful as the earlier banknote. Also not being ugly, I would say, but it's not as beautiful as the pick number 25. And in this case, this is still a much easier to find banknote and much cheaper in the market. Before I finish the video, just a look into modern Burundi. So Burundi is still one of the poorest countries in the world. It's heavily depending on foreign aid, especially UN, to feed the people, which is almost unimaginable in this day and age. And both racial tensions are still running high between Hutus and Tutsis, as well as the ruling class still being this kleptocratic politician elite. The last president, called Pierre Nkurunziza, was a president for 15 years between 2005 and 2020. Is this guy here? Um, and he went for 3 terms, besides the constitution of Burundi saying that he could only run for 2 terms. Um, he was just, well, he finished the last term just this year in June 2020, and he was basically substituted by a puppet of 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 him, a guy that won by 72% of the votes in an election that was deemed by all uh, viewers of the election as completely fraudulent. So once again, the future is not bright for Burundi. Um, at least the political future, the banknotes actually are quite extraordinary, especially the newer, and these you can get for relatively cheap price. The newer banknotes are actually also very beautiful. So I'll leave you to that. Some interesting information about Burundi. Just let me know if you want to know more on the comments, and thanks for watching. See you next time.